Harry Hedgehog's birthday. One summer morning, Berry the snail, Dolly the ladybird and their forest friends were playing in the meadow. They were taking turns on the leaf swing. It must be so much fun to play on that swing. It's a shame I'm too heavy for it, Harry Hedgehog sighed. His friends didn't know what to say. It's Harry Hedgehog's 10th birthday next week, the ladybird said. He'll be 10 years old, the little snail nodded. What do you think he'd like for his birthday? I know, Balthazar exclaimed and jumped to his feet. A swing! That's a super idea. Let's make a big swing for Harry, Dolly said enthusiastically. The little friends got to work immediately. They brought a saw, a hammer, nails and screws and searched for some strong branches. They tied the swing to thick wooden poles with very strong string. When the swing was ready, they all went to Balthazar's house to bake a cake. They cracked eggs and stirred the butter. The mixer whirred away and wooden spoons clattered in bowls. The little bee's kitchen was soon filled with delicious smells. They decorated the cake all over with cherries, raisins and walnuts. Let's put candles on it, Flutter said. Yes, 10 candles, Dolly nodded. Let's write a letter to Harry, Berry said. Dear Harry, please come to Balthazar's house at lunchtime. We'll all see you there. Can you take it to Harry, please? Berry asked. But don't say a word about the cake and the swing, Dolly shouted after him. Balthazar and Stanley put the cake on a round table and carried it out of the house. The little ants were playing hide and seek, and suddenly the smallest ant ran right into the table. You tipped the table over! The cake's ruined! Balthazar moaned. The cake! What are we going to do now? Dolly sobbed. Harry Hedgehog will be here any minute and he won't have a cake, Berry said sadly. The little ants felt very sorry for what they'd done, but one of them had an idea. Let's gather lots of fruit and berries and build a big pile. It'll be almost like a cake, won't it? That's a good idea, Stanley said. I know Harry loves fruit. Berry, Dolly, Balthazar, Stanley and the little ants began to gather fruit in the forest. Eddy the potato beetle, Zephyr the dragonfly and Rosita the rose beetle helped them too. They soon had a very big pile indeed. Stanley stuck 10 candles on top of the fruit, just seconds before Bubble arrived with Harry Hedgehog. Happy birthday, Harry! They all shouted. Wow, look at all that delicious fruit, my favourite. Thank you very much, the hedgehog exclaimed. We've got a surprise for you, Dolly said, and they led Harry to the swing. Harry was very surprised. What a big swing! Can I use it? He asked cheerfully. Yes, we built it for you, Berry replied. Hooray! Now I can swing too! Thank you so much, Harry said thankfully. Then they stood around the fruit pile and began to eat. They ate and ate until nearly all the fruit was gone. They stuck the leftover apples and pears on Harry's spikes, and he took them home to his mossy house. Harry went to bed with a happy smile and looked forward to tomorrow, when he'd swing with his friends again.
Dr. Owl and the Cakes. Summer had arrived in the forest. All the little friends decided to have a picnic to welcome the new season. Let's have a picnic in the meadow, suggested Balthazar the bee. Everyone should bake something, added Zephyr the dragonfly. We should make someone the judge. who can taste all the cakes and decide which one tastes best, Berry suggested. We should ask Dr. Owl, shouted Flutter. The little friends set to work. Dolly made cakes with ladybird spots. Berry, of course, made snail-shaped rolls. Balthazar made lots of stripy bees. Bubble made flower-shaped shortbread. Rosita made strawberry balls with marzipan roses. Flutter made butterfly biscuits. Morris made sweet dumplings. Eddy made caramel cakes. The centipede made long cake slices. Zephyr made fruity balls. Stanley made poppy pies. Frank made chocolate drops. The Moon Beetle made lemon cookies. Spider made apple bonbons. Iris made coconut snowmen. Betty made chestnut hearts. The Ant Queen made crowned muffins. And Harry, Hedgehog and Leapy made tiny treats in the shape of hedgehogs. Everyone was ready by noon, and they all gathered in the meadow. They arrived with large plates of cakes. Dr. Owl soon appeared. They're very pretty, he hummed happily. Now all go home and come back when it's getting dark. I'll announce the most delicious cake this evening. As soon as it started to get dark, the little pals made their way to the meadow. But when they arrived, they were surprised to see that Dr. Owl was fast asleep. Berry shouted out, Dr. Owl, where are all the cakes? Have you eaten all of them? Dolly said, sounding upset. Well, maybe I tasted more cakes than I should have, he explained. And which one won? Asked Bubble. I don't know. My tummy hurts so much that I can hardly move. The others felt sorry for Dr. Owl. His tummy hurt so much that Harry Hedgehog took him home in his cart. So now what? Will the picnic be cancelled? Bubble asked sadly. Of course not, a voice shouted, and the firebug appeared in his chimney cake truck. The forest friends cheered up right away, and the sound of jolly music filled the meadow. They all stood in a circle and danced until late, and of course, they ate all the chimney cake and a few crumbs that Dr. Owl had left. The next morning, Dr. Owl woke in a grumpy mood. I'm rounder than ever, he grumbled to himself. Then there was a knock at the door. How are you, Dr. Owl? They all asked at once. Better. I'm sorry for spoiling the picnic. You didn't spoil it, Berry laughed. Come and do some exercises with us, Balthazar added. We'll all move about together and you'll soon start to feel good. Dr. Owl puffed and panted, but he did all the exercises, and it really did make him feel much better indeed. January. Eddy and the toy car. The new year had arrived at last. The little friends were all at Stanley's house. The stag beetle proudly showed his friends the new toy cars he'd been given for Christmas. The silver dump truck is my favourite. It's got big wheels. It goes fast. The doors open and you can tick the back up and down, he said with a smile. Let's build a track and drive all the cars around it, Eddy suggested. When the track was finished, they drove all the toy cars on it. Eddy really wanted to try the silver dumper truck, but Berry wouldn't let it go. When he eventually got bored, Leapy pounced on the super truck. Then Dolly took it after Leapy. Eddy only managed to get his hands on Stanley's dumper truck for a few minutes at the end of the day. He pushed it so hard that it rolled under the cupboard. Eddy reached under the cupboard to pull it out, but the wheel got stuck behind the cupboard leg, and it fell off. Eddy tried to push it back on, but it wouldn't turn after that. It started to get dark and the friends were getting tired. Eddy dared not tell the stag beetle that the dumper truck's wheel was broken. Instead, he put it back with all the other toy cars as if nothing had happened. They all said goodbye to Stanley and went home. Eddy soon got back to his house, but he could not get to sleep. He felt very bad about the dumper truck. He woke the next morning to the sound of shouting. Stanley was having an argument with Berry on the hill nearby. "Berry, you've broken my toy car." "It wasn't me. There was nothing wrong with it when I gave it to Leapy," the snail boy responded, sounding a little offended. "Then I'll ask Leapy." "Leapy, did you break the wheel on my dumper truck?" "No, of course not. It wasn't me," the grasshopper girl assured him. "I gave it to Dolly. Ask her," Leapy suggested. And so the stag beetle set off to the ladybird girl's house. Eddy felt terrible because he was the one who'd broken the wheel on the dumper truck. Then he had an idea. He had an old and bashed up dumper truck a lot like Stanley's. He found it and hurried over to Flutter's house. "Flutter, you've got some silver paint, haven't you?" "The silver's run out, but I've got some gold." "Please help me," the potato beetle said, and he told Flutter the whole story. Flutter was happy to help. She painted the toy car, and it soon shined as bright as new. "Thank you, Flutter," said Eddy, and he set off to give the reborn dumper truck to Stanley. When he arrived at Stanley's house, he was greeted by the sound of loud laughter. "Did you manage to fix it?" "Yes, I bumped into Charlie at Dolly's house and I asked him to lend me a hand," Stanley said with a smile. "Unfortunately, I never found out who broke the wheel." "It was me," Eddy told him. "I'm happy you managed to mend it, but I've brought you something too." "Oh, that's super!" "Thank you," Stanley laughed. "I'm not angry anymore. Do you want to join us? We're going to race with the toy cars." And the three boys set about building a track for the race.
The Moon Beetle. The Moon Beetle lived in a little moon-shaped house. He had moon-shaped antennae on his head, and his wings were also shaped like tiny moons. But he couldn't fly because his wings were too thin. He was happy just to sit in the grass and look at the shape of the clouds. His little legs were also weak, and so he could neither fly nor walk. But the little spider helped him with everything. The Moon Beetle sat in a moon-shaped armchair with wheels, and they took short walks together. If the Moon Beetle was hungry, little spider pushed him to the table. He tucked the Moon Beetle into bed at night. Little spider never left the Moon Beetle's side, and he always knew exactly what he needed and when. He also knew when he didn't need help. But the moon chair wasn't good for longer journeys. When he went on longer journeys, he always called on his old friend the centipede for help. So that is how they went collecting mushrooms in the forest and enjoyed trips to the puppet show. And that's how they went to pick strawberries in the summer months. The centipede was happy to carry the Moon Beetle on his back. But one summer day, the centipede received a letter.
Look at this,
He said excitedly.
It's from Reggie Squirrel. He's invited me to visit him. I'm leaving tomorrow. What will happen to me?
The Moon Beetle asked in a sad voice.
How will I go to Alfonso's violin concert tomorrow? Wait, we'll think of something,
The centipede said.
If only I could go to the concert on my own without help.
The Moon Beetle sighed.
I know what would be good. If you had a chair that you could push yourself in. A rolling chair.
A wheelchair, the Moon Beetle repeated.
Yes, that would be really good.
The centipede produced a pencil and started to design the contraption. When the design was completed, they both went to see Eddy, the potato beetle. He was very handy and could make anything. Eddy studied the design and then got straight to work. He brought his tools, all the parts, and he drilled and hammered. The wheelchair was ready that same afternoon. Sit in it, try it out, Eddy said, and he helped the Moon Beetle into the chair.
Now try and push it,
The centipede encouraged his friend. The Moon Beetle carefully turned the ring attached to the wheel, and the chair began to move.
Hooray!
Eddy cheered. This will be my legs, the Moon Beetle whispered quietly, and he smiled. The sunbeams gently stroked his weak legs. They practiced until late in the day. The Moon Beetle slowly learned how to direct, speed up, slow down, and stop the chair. The next day, the Moon Beetle made his way to the Cricket's concert all on his own. Take care of yourself, the little spider shouted after him in a worried tone. The others were surprised and all ran to greet him. Hey, you got here on your own? Berry asked, and took a good look at the chair. Yes, all on my own, the Moon Beetle proudly announced, and he told them all about the new contraption. Alfonso's concert soon began. All the forest friends had come along to hear him play. After the concert, Berry and Dolly walked home with the Moon Beetle. The little spider was sitting in the window waiting for his friend to return, safe and sound. Fairy cards. Flutter the Butterfly Girl had a favourite card game. There were 16 cards in total, with pictures of pretty fairies in yellow, dark blue, pink, green, orange, red, purple, and light blue dresses. No two cards were alike. The girls played with their fairy memory cards all the time. Stanley the Stag Beetle thought of a horrid joke to play. I could scribble on all the cards, he thought naughtily to himself, but he didn't dare do it. And so he tried to talk Balthazar into ruining the pretty cards. Balthazar, wouldn't it be funny to scribble all over Flutter's cards? The silly bumblebee gave a sneaky snigger and started to scribble on the cards with a dark green felt-tip pen. He drew moustaches, devil's horns, forks, and a devil's tail on the pictures of the pretty fairies. The Butterfly Girl saw her cards that afternoon and screamed in horror. What happened to my lovely cards? She asked in a panicky voice, and Flutter began to sob. What a horrid thing to do! Who could have done such a thing? Dolly asked, sounding terribly shocked. I know who did it. Balthazar's the only one with a dark green pen, Zephyr said in an angry tone. And I saw a green mark on his hand. Did you do this? Berry asked gruffly.
That's not how it happened.
Then how did it happen?
It's all Stanley's fault. It was his idea.
But I didn't scribble all over the cards. Flutter sobbed and Reggie Squirrel gave her a comforting cuddle. The one who thought it up is naughty and the one who did it, Reggie Squirrel snapped strictly. You're both naughty.
That was a really stupid joke, boys. Just imagine if we burst your football,
Zephyr added.
How sad would that make you feel?
You're right, Stanley admitted. Flutter, we'll take your cards and see if we can get the scribbles off them. OK?
OK,
sniffed the butterfly girl. Stanley and Balthazar strolled sadly home and got straight to work trying to fix the cards they had scribbled all over. But the harder they tried, the more mess they made. The rubber made a hole in the paper and holes appeared all over the place.
Berry, help! We couldn't rub the scribbles off and we've made a hole with all the rubbing. That's because you can't rub felt-tip pen out. Let's go and ask Dolly for help.
Dolly, help! We can't fix the cards. I'm not going to help you. It was all your idea, so you have to put it right.
Don't be so unfair. Please help, because Stanley and Balthazar really do want to make things better again.
OK, come on in. The three boys sat down at the table.
They can't be fixed.
The boys just sat and looked sad. We have to think of something else, and I've already got an idea. Let's make new cards. Dolly placed pieces of white card on the table and took out her felt-tip pens. The boys cut the cards out and Dolly tried to copy the fairy pictures. Then Balthazar and Stanley carefully coloured the drawings in. All 8 fairies were soon ready, and of course there were 2 of each. You draw so nicely, Dolly. Now give them to Flutter and say that you're sorry.
Flutter, look! We've made you a whole new set of cards.
Dolly drew them and we coloured them in.
Please be friends with us again.
Flutter flicked through all the cards and a smile spread across her face. Thank you, she said and invited the boys into the house. They were soon joined by Berry, Dolly and Zephyr, and the friends played until late with the new pack of cards. And they were all the best of friends once again. Easter eggs. Easter had arrived at last. Flutter the butterfly girl, Rosita the rose beetle, Leapy the grasshopper girl and Zephyr the dragonfly all gathered together at Dolly's house to paint eggs for Easter. How many eggs do we have to paint? Rosita asked. Now let's see, Berry is certain to come and visit tomorrow, but so is Balthazar, Stanley, Eddy, Bubble, Alfonso and Sam Snail. That means we need to paint 7 eggs each. We'd better get started. Oh, they look so pretty. I'm sure that the boys will love them, Flutter told the others. It's time to go home. I've got to get up early tomorrow to make pancakes for the boys, Flutter said. I'm going to bake scones, Rosita said. And I'm going to make an apple strudel, Dolly added. All the girls got up bright and early the next morning. Flutter hurried into the kitchen, put on her apron and mixed up a big batch of pancake batter. Rosita popped her apron on and started to knead her scone dough. Dolly rolled her pastry out and Zephyr made a sponge roll. Leapy woke up feeling quite excited. Boys never get up early. I've still got plenty of time to make an apple pie. And she put a big basket of apples on the table. Oh dear. The basket of apples tipped over and knocked her pretty painted Easter eggs onto the floor. They were all ruined. Oh, my eggs! Now what am I going to do? What will I give to my visitors? The little grasshopper girl sobbed as she ran to Dolly's house. Dolly, I've smashed all 7 of my eggs! Help me! I haven't got time, Leapy. I'm busy baking. But I've still got 2 unpainted eggs. If you paint them quickly, they'll be dry by the time the boys come. Rosita, all my eggs got smashed. Can you help?
I'm too busy baking, but you can have these 3 white eggs. You've still got time to paint them if you hurry.
Flutter, help! I've got to paint my eggs all over again. The first lot got broken.
All of them? I am sorry, but I can't help now. My pancakes will burn. You can have these 2 unpainted eggs I've got left over.
Something terrible has happened, Zephyr. I've broken all the eggs I painted yesterday. Please help me, because I haven't got time to paint another 7 eggs.
Leapy complained to her dragonfly friend. I know who can help you. Come with me. The 2 friends ran through the forest all the way to a cave. The spider stumbled sleepily from his home. Oh, can you help us, Spider? Zephyr asked. Leapy's eggs all got broken. And now she has to paint new ones and there's not much time left. The boys will be coming to visit her soon.
If I have to,
the spider grumbled.
Thank you. You're very kind.
Leapy got out all her paints and brushes and the 2 of them started to paint the eggs. The spider could paint 3 eggs at once.
We're ready,
Leapy said with a happy laugh. And then she thanked the spider for his help and she arranged the pretty eggs in a dish. There soon came a knock at Leapy's front door. She opened the door and was greeted by all 7 boys at once. Happy Easter, Leapy! They had all come to see Leapy, who offered them a dish, and they all chose a pretty Easter egg.
I haven't got any cakes to offer you, I'm afraid,
Leapy said in a whisper, and then she told them all about what had happened. Don't worry about that, the boys laughed. We ate strudel at Dolly's house, scones at Rosita's house, pancakes at Flutter's house, and sponge roll at Zephyr's house. Our tummies are full. The Sandcastle. On a sunny summer day, Berry, Dolly, Bubble and Balthazar put on their swimming costumes, grabbed their buckets and spades, and set out for Sand Island to build castles.
Look at this huge watermelon,
Balthazar said in surprise. Oh, let's take it with us, Berry suggested. Then we can all have a feast at the end of the day. OK, Berry, we'll take it. Berry, Dolly, Balthazar and Bubble carefully rolled the watermelon in front of them as they walked along. But when the friends got to the top of the hill, the round watermelon started to roll away down the slope. Stop it! Dolly shouted to the others. Bubble pounced on the watermelon, but he couldn't stop it. The baby beetle slipped off and bumped his head. The juicy watermelon just carried on rolling down the side of the hill. They all ran after it as fast as they could, but the watermelon was much faster than all of them. Then a terrible thing happened. The watermelon smashed into a sharp rock. Our lovely watermelon smashed into pieces, Dolly moaned.
Oh, the watermelon!
Balthazar was very sad too. Why are you all complaining? Let's eat it instead, the baby beetle suggested. So the 4 friends sat down and started to munch on the watermelon. They ate the sweet red fruit until their tummies were full. We'd better hurry to Sand Island, or there'll be no time left to build sandcastles.
Dolly, wait for me. I'll fly with you,
Balthazar said. Me too, Bubble added. But I can't fly. Are you 3 going to leave me here? Berry asked with a sad sob.
Let's build boats out of the watermelon rind. This way Berry can sail to the island with us,
Balthazar suggested. They selected 4 strong pieces of melon rind, One for Dolly, one for Berry, one for Balthazar, and one for Bubble. They made the masts out of strong branches and the sails out of large leaves. When they were done, they launched the little boats on the water, and the wind quickly carried them away to Sand Island. Hooray! We're sailing, Berry said with an excited squeak. They all got to Sand Island with plenty of time left to play.
Look! Someone's coming! And he's got a bucket in his hand.
Indeed, there was a cheerful beetle walking towards them on the sandy shore. Who are you? Dolly asked. I'm Sean, the sand beetle. I live here and was about to build a sandcastle.
Really?
Balthazar asked.
Can we join you?
Of course you can. Let's all build together, Sean said with joy. The 5 of them built a grand sandcastle with all kinds of tunnels, towers and bridges. Now all it needs is a flag on top, Dolly said. So she drew a picture of Sean on a leaf and stuck it in the very top of the castle. That looks super! Does that mean it's my sandcastle now? Sean said enthusiastically. When the sun went in, Dolly and her friends said goodbye to Sean and headed home. Good night, King of the Castle! Dolly shouted, waving goodbye to their new friend. The Big Spider. Berry, Dolly, Flutter and Balthazar were gathering colourful leaves in the woods when they heard someone crying. Can you hear something, Berry? Dolly asked. Yes, it's coming from the cave. The friends were frightened, but went deeper and deeper into the dark cave. Then they saw where the noise was coming from. A baby beetle sat crying. Oh dear, what's wrong, baby beetle? Why are you crying? I got lost in this dark cave and I can't find my way out. How am I going to get back to my little house? What's your name? Berry asked. Bubble. Come on, don't be sad, Bubble. We'll show you the way to your house, Dolly said and hugged the baby beetle. Suddenly, they heard a scary sound from deep inside the cave. They hugged each other. All of a sudden, a big angry spider appeared and shouted at them. Who woke me up? What are you doing in my cave?
Run, everybody!
Balthazar yelled, and they all ran. Let's hide here, Dolly said, and they all hid behind a rock. Luckily, the spider didn't spot them, but then Bubble started crying, and the spider found their hiding place. Berry, Dolly, Bubble, Balthazar and Flutter ran as fast as they could. But oh dear, Balthazar tumbled over a stone and the big spider caught up with them. Berry grabbed a spiky twig and bravely defended his friends. Go away, you ugly spider, he shouted. Berry diverted the big spider's attention while Flutter and Balthazar ran around it with a length of thread. Dolly looked after little Bubble and kept him safe.
We've got you now,
Balthazar shouted triumphantly. The spider tried to get out of the tangle, but it couldn't. And then it started to cry. I didn't want to hurt you.
I've never hurt anybody before. I was just mad because you woke me up. Please let me go. I'll show you the way out of the cave."
"Do you promise you really won't hurt us?" Berry asked.
"Yes, I promise. Climb on my back and I'll carry you out."
They all sat on the spider's back and were soon outside again. "It's time for us to say goodbye."
"Please come and see me again."
"Thank you for your help, Spider," Flutter said. Bubble had fallen asleep in the ladybird's arms. "What should we do with him?" puzzled Dolly. "Let's build a pram," Berry suggested, and they got to work immediately. They made him a pram out of a horse chestnut shell with wheels out of little logs. "But where does he live?" "I know," Flutter said. The baby beetle didn't wake up until they reached his house. "Oh, my little house. Have you brought me home? Thank you so much." "Good night, little Bubble." "Sleep tight and don't go into that cave all by yourself again because you'll get lost," Berry and Dolly said. Then they gave Bubble a hug.